Welcome back, Dan. Good to chat with you again. I was just reminding myself we spoke ahead of the season when we didn't really know how things would unfold. This many games of the season now, we're seeing how it's unfolding. How have you been? How have you? I mean, where's your head at with how the season's going so far?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. It's good to be back. I think my probably outlook on the season in terms of City hasn't changed very much compared to the last time that we spoke.
Yeah,
My outlook when it comes to Liverpool has changed quite significantly since then.
yeah,
Looking at the start of the season, I looked at the business that you guys had done. I
yeah.
wouldn't say I was worried. I was terrified. I was very envious, and I thought that Liverpool, looked in great nick, having strengthened from a position of strength already. Obviously, it hasn't quite gone the way that perhaps many people thought it would, and probably Liverpool fans included. Arsenal have been very consistent, and they're looking like the team to beat now. But the last couple of games, Liverpool have obviously found a bit of form and are coming back. I think City's season has been a little bit up and down, but as we discussed pre-season, I was expecting a bit of a slow start from City, having had a very kind of disrupted pre-season with the Club World Cup, having only played one pre-season friendly. I thought we were going to go into the season a little bit undercooked, and that kind of was what happened. Although we won at Wolves 4-0 on the opening day of the season, I kind of thought, oh, okay, we've hit the ground running, everything's good. We do look like we might, challenge for the title and be quite good again this season after being really poor last season, obviously. I think what was more the case was that Wolves are just terrible, and that was a bit of a red herring, that result, I suppose. Then we had a couple of defeats on the bounce going into that first international break, and it was a little bit worrying. I think a lot of fans were wondering if we were going to be in for a long season again. And since then, the form has been mostly good with a setback against Aston Villa. We lost a couple of weeks ago, but then since then we've recovered and responded to that with a couple of good wins. So I think a lot of City fans are going into this game at the weekend feeling pretty confident. I'd kind of back us against anyone on our home pitch, and I think it's going to be a really interesting game. Liverpool, like I said, are looking a little bit better, and will probably be feeling a little bit more confident about themselves as well going into this game. So I think we've got a very interesting game coming our way on Sunday.
Yeah, I think so, and I think we've spoken so often around. We've sort of come to expect or understand what was going to happen in these kind of games, given the rivalry between Guardiola and Klopp. And yeah, I know Slot versus Guardiola was the first time we saw it last season. The Anfield leg of that was sort of Klopp-esque in terms of sort of like, high press Liverpool being their old selves at Anfield, and then the away performance last season. It was interesting because I remember in the aftermath of that performance, I gave a lot of credit to Slot doing things in a different way, and I was like, oh, I'm not used to seeing this kind of performance at the Etihad. I'm used to thinking that there's only one way in which Liverpool can play if they're going to win at the Etihad, because our record there was fairly poor in the Premier League. And so when we saw Liverpool put in that kind of very controlled performance, like kind of very, very targeted kind of attacks when they did attack, and then shut up shop and just like back themselves to defend what they had. That was very unusual, I think, for a lot of Liverpool fans to see. And at the time, I remember I gave a lot of credit to Slot and went, well, there's a different way of doing things, and it's just going to take some time to get used to it. And what's funny about that is I think since the season ended, and obviously things ended like in glory for Slot and for Liverpool. He's spoken a number of times actually, and it's come out quite a few times that I don't know whether you've heard this, but that game and how Liverpool played in that game was not to Slot's liking
Mm.
actually, and that he would have preferred Liverpool had played a bit, like, to quote him, like if we played a bit more football. Um, it's interesting. I think it seems as though what has come out of that game is that effectively we got ahead. A number of players who'd been to the Etihad and back many times before decided, hang on, like there's a way of coming out of this game with points. We know what it's like. We're gonna make sure that happens. Almost similar to a Liverpool Spurs Champions League final. I remember where having been burned by Real Madrid
Mm.
previously, having scored so early that Liverpool decided no. We're not gonna, and probably ruined the spectacle as a result, but won the game. And um, it feels like, I mean, I say all that to basically say this time I have no real inkling as to kind of what kind of game we might see. I wanted to ask you what you've made of this new look City so far this season. A new look in terms of players that have left and players that have arrived, but also in terms of um, tactical newness. You know, things that have been tried by Pep and maybe influenced by Pepin and sort of Linda's in the backroom team
Mm.
um, that have borne fruit, but have been quite, unusual to see from Guardiola at times. Yeah, just give me your thoughts on that. Sorry, I've got a big long-winded uh, wind up.
No, not at all. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think the tactical approach to the season has been drastically different to in the past from City. I think it's been kind of baby steps, and they've been working towards a kind of change, and I think just approaching games in a slightly different way than perhaps they would have done in the past. You know, we were a very, very possession heavy, possession oriented team in recent years, and in the period of that we were very successful and we won the 4 league titles in a row. That seemed to be the way to go, and it felt like last season that kind of approach got found out a little bit. Teams understood how to set up against that, basically sitting back, waiting for City to lose the ball and then hitting us on the break. And we had to respond to that. And towards the end of last season, they found a little bit of a response. But the way that City were playing towards the end of last season, it was very much kind of grinding games out, grinding results out. They weren't playing particularly great football themselves. And it was just a means to an end, really. So they've started the season afresh. They brought Pep Linders in. I think they did want a little bit of kind of a sprinkling of that Jurgen Klopp Liverpool magic dust on the team somehow, which I think was the sole reason that Linders was brought in. And they do play a little bit of a sort of faster game, I would say now. They do play in transition a little bit more than they used to. You know, we're seeing games like the game against Bournemouth at the weekend when we won the game 3-1, but had less possession than Bournemouth. You know, that was almost unheard of a couple of years ago. We were whoever we played, we were sort of getting 65% possession, really. So ceding a little bit of the ball to other teams has been part of the change, and trying to break quickly. You know, we've got the likes of Jeremy Doku and to a kind of lesser extent, Savinho on the wings, who you can get the ball out to them and they can break quite quickly. Erling Haaland is obviously pretty lethal if he can get in behind, as we saw against Bournemouth at the weekend a couple of times, a couple of goals that he scored there. And also, I suppose perhaps the biggest change that we've seen at City from last season, previous seasons, is in the goalkeeping position with Ederson. He was pretty fundamental to that kind of possession-based build-up where he would take the ball under pressure, he would attract opposition players towards him, and then play a pass through the lines, and City could build up that way. Donnarumma isn't that kind of goalkeeper. He often, I mean, to be fair, when Donnarumma came in over the summer, I think a lot of people were like, hang on, this is not going to work. The guy's a good goalkeeper, he's a great shot stopper, but this is going to require such a reinvention of the way everything works for City and the way that they play. It's just not going to work. It doesn't make sense. And I think he's kind of made a bit of a mockery of that. He's not Edison on the ball. He is a little more kind of cumbersome with it sometimes, but I think for the most part he's been very competent. You know, he does allow us to build up from the back. Sometimes he'll have to kick it long or kick it out of play, you know, if it comes to it, and it's kind of refreshing in a way to, you know, and kind of a bit of a makes things a bit easier on my nerves as a fan sometimes for a goalkeeper who'll just punt it long if there's a bit of pressure and isn't
Has
isn't
he
crazy like Edison.
has he been comfortable sweeping as well? Because that was again something I remember associating with it. Like when you play so high, at times you've needed Edison to be that sweeper keeper for you, and he did so quite effectively. In my head, I've kind of not pictured Donnarumma doing that, but I feel like he could. But has he had to do much of that for you this
Not
season? Or?
so much, no. There was actually in the Dortmund game on Wednesday night, he made a great like sliding tackle when there was a bit of a misunderstanding at the back, and it was, you know, would have been if he'd not won the tackle, then you know might have been sent off, or a Dortmund player would have been through on goal with an open goal. But he made a really good tackle. But yeah, mostly he kind of stays on his line a little bit. He's obviously a great shot stopper, and we've seen quite a lot of that. He's got a great command of his area. You know, particularly the draw at Arsenal when it was real backs to the wall earlier in the season. Donnarumma was really fundamental to that, coming for crosses, punching the ball. So he's been a superb signing for, I think it was 26 million or something like that. I think he's actually improved City, you know, and you won't find many City fans who will have a bad word to say about Ederson. He was a superb player for us over the years, but I think it was time for him to move on and time for us to make a change. And we've signed a fabulous goalkeeper there. So I think he's been the biggest change from previous seasons. Obviously, there were a couple of players that came in, quite high profile signings. Tijani Reinders was one who came in over the summer, made a really good start, really good debut, got I think it was 2 assists and a goal against Wolves on the opening day. Hasn't done an awful lot since. I think it's been a bit of his kind of debut suggested that he'd really found his feet in the Premier League really quickly. But I think since then there has been an adaptation period required. Having come from Italy, I think he is perhaps not quite up to speed with the pace of the Premier League at the moment. It seems like he needs a little bit of time, more time to think on the ball than you get in the Premier League, and that's something that he's kind of learning and learning the patterns of play. Unfortunately, Ryan Cherky got injured after just about a game and a half at the start of the season, and is only just coming back now, and he's looking pretty good. You know, he looked good against Bournemouth at the weekend, scored a goal against Dortmund in midweek as well. Ait Nouri is another one that was brought in over the summer that felt like a signing that would kind of revolutionise City a little bit, but we haven't seen much from him due to injury as well. That's been quite frustrating. But his absence has meant that Nico O'Reilly has been able to continue playing left back. And when I say left back, he's sort of down as a left back on the team sheet, but he plays this weird hybrid role of kind of left back and centre forward at the same time. I've never seen anything like it. It's like it's more than an attacking wing back. It's really strange and really, I think, quite crucial to the way City play at the moment. It really kind of like confuses opposition defences, having an extra player in attacking positions who's really good on the ball, really intelligent player, strong, good touch. I think he's been quietly one of City's better players this season so far. So all that combined with kind of the stalwarts of previous years, Erling Haaland's been phenomenal. Phil Foden has been pretty good for the most part. Scored a couple of goals against Dortmund in midweek and is looking a lot more like his old self with every passing game, really. So I think overall City are playing pretty well, but I don't think we've seen a kind of dramatic shift in tactics or kind of new players making a significant impact. Perhaps compared to the likes of Arsenal or maybe even Liverpool. Yeah.
And has there been a case of players, like you mentioned, some of those stalwarts who are now being asked to do different things for it could be tactical reasons, but also just by nature of the fact that they're getting older and they're different kind of players now. I mean, I think one thing I remember reading about this week was Foden being asked to do some work, or some of his work deeper on the pitch, but just because of how comfortable he is in situations where he's under pressure and getting out of those situations, and then like breaking the press and playing the ball to City when they are on the counter or in transition, as opposed to what he was doing a couple of seasons ago, where teams were camped in the box all the time, and he was able to kind of be that final threader in the final third. And another one I think about is Bernardo Silva, just by the nature of he's getting older and he's not able
Yeah.
to do. Thankfully, he's not able to do what he did 3 or 4 seasons ago, where he was the all action Bernardo Silva, if you want to call him that, and still an incredibly influential player, but seems to be doing it slightly differently. Has there been a case of that for a few of them as well? And we'll come on to talk about Haaland separately. 'Cause I feel like that's
Yeah.
particularly interesting.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of it has been a kind of adjustment period to not having Kevin De Bruyne there anymore. And for the past season, maybe even a little bit more, City didn't really have Kevin De Bruyne at his best. He was injured and seemed like he would his sort of days as a top level player were kind of over last season, which was quite sad to see. But City have kind of needed somebody to take up the mantle, that creative mantle that he played, and they haven't had a kind of like for like person or one person that has taken up that mantle. It's just been a case of all of them doing a little bit of it. Like you mentioned, Foden dropping a little bit deeper, playing more of a sort of playmaking role than perhaps he had in the past, where he was kind of more of a finisher or more someone who'd just be there on the edge of the box to kind of have a shot or something. He's often taking the ball off the defence and driving forward with it. Same with Bernardo Silva, who plays kind of a very much like a sort of supplementary supporting role a lot of the time. He's not the kind of player who's like whipping in a cross or playing a through ball or having a shot himself. He's doing a lot of leg work, a lot of the dirty work, really. That is really important, and it's enabled players like Reinders to have a little bit of this kind of adjustment period, or just kind of like learning the ropes a little bit. Really, I think that's been quite a key role for Bernardo.